In 2017, I was excited to start a new chapter in my life. I had just found the perfect apartment to share with a roommate named Lily. It was affordable, spacious, and located right in the heart of the university town. The only catch was that I needed a roommate to split the rent. That's how I met Lily. The first time I met Lily, she seemed calm and polite. She had a reserved demeanor, but her presentation was convincing enough for me to feel comfortable signing the lease. My initial impressions were good, and the thought of sharing an apartment with someone didn't seem concerning at the time. I was too focused on starting my studies and the new routine to worry about any potential issues with my new roommate. Lily and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with a generous common area. At first, our schedules didn't overlap much, so we barely saw each other. I spent most of my time studying at the library or participating in extracurricular activities, while Lily seemed to have her own routine, coming and going in a way that rarely intersected with mine. Initially, this was a relief. I didn't have to worry about close living arrangements. The first few months were relatively peaceful, but I began to notice some oddities. One day, after returning home from a particularly long study session, I noticed that the hallway light was on, even though Lily wasn't home. I thought maybe I had accidentally left it on. I didn't pay much attention to it, as Lily's behavior was generally respectful. However, I started to find small signs of disorder. Things I was sure I had put back in their places were out of order. Books on the coffee table were in different spots, and sometimes I found personal items that I didn't remember leaving in other rooms. I started to wonder if I was just being forgetful or if something more was going on. Things escalated when I realized the hallway light was often on at night, even when Lily wasn't home. This made me uneasy, but I tried not to dwell on it. Still, a growing sense of discomfort began to settle in, a feeling that something was off. The tipping point came during a particularly stressful week of exams and final projects. I was spending long hours at the library, and the last thing I needed was to worry about the safety of my own space. That's when I decided to install a small security camera in my room. I wanted to make sure my belongings were secure and that nothing was mysteriously disappearing. The first few days of recording showed nothing alarming. I was relieved to see that there was no suspicious activity. However, one day, when I reviewed the footage, my relief quickly turned to horror. I saw Lily entering my room at night while I was asleep. She was wearing comfortable clothes and appeared to be moving stealthily. At first, I thought it might have been an accident, a search for something she had lost. But then, Lily began to rummage through my belongings. She started with my books, then went through my drawers and even my clothes. My stomach churned with terror and outrage. I couldn't understand why she would do something like this, and the feeling of violation was overwhelming. With my heart racing, I decided to confront Lily. I didn't want to escalate things unnecessarily, so I chose a moment when we were both at home and tried to stay calm. I called her to the kitchen, away from the camera's view. "Lily, I need to talk to you about something serious," I began, trying to sound as calm as possible. She looked at me with a curious expression, as if unsure what to expect. "Sure, what's going on?" I tried to explain what I had seen on the recordings without sounding accusatory. I talked about how I found the camera and the disturbing footage of her in my room. She listened in silence, without interrupting. When I finished, Lily surprised me by remaining calm and apologetic. "I'm sorry, Karen. I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. I was looking for a lost item, she said in a controlled tone. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I didn't know what to think. Her apology seemed sincere, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she had invaded my privacy. Nevertheless, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt and hoped it was an isolated mistake. Unfortunately, the feeling of unease didn't go away. The following weeks were marked by a growing sense of distrust. I began hearing strange noises at night, footsteps and whispers that seemed to come from Lily's room, which was often locked. One night, the noises became more intense. I heard something being dragged and, with my heart pounding, decided to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight and walked down the hallway, trying to keep calm. When I reached Lily's room, the door was locked. I knocked, but there was no response. The feeling of dread only increased. I returned to my room, trying to stay calm, but fear kept me awake. By morning, the hallway light was on, and I decided I couldn't endure the situation any longer. The next day, I was anxious and nervous. I decided to take action and seek help. I contacted the building management and reported the disturbing behavior and my growing concern for safety. They promised to investigate and talk to Lily. That night, when I came home, I was on edge. My fear turned to terror when, upon opening my room's door, I found a handwritten note on the floor. The message read, "I'm always with you." The feeling of dread was overwhelming. The security camera was now in my room, and the footage showed the scene of me finding the note. I knew I had to leave. I immediately called the building management for help. They arrived quickly and began their investigation. Soon after, the police were called, and Lily was removed from the apartment. With Lily out of the apartment, I began to feel somewhat safer, but the experience left a lasting mark. The building management conducted a thorough investigation and discovered that Lily had a history of invasive and disturbing behavior in previous apartments. She had been accused of spying and privacy violations on several occasions, but the reports had been ignored until now. The apartment was sealed and inspected, and management made repairs to ensure that no one else would have a similar experience. The sense of security I had lost never fully returned, and the experience left me with a constant distrust of new roommates. My life moved forward, but the mark left by those events never fully faded. I continued with my studies and eventually graduated, but the experience taught me to be extremely cautious and to pay attention to any warning signs, especially when it came to sharing space with someone I barely knew. The story spread among friends and colleagues, and I shared my experience to warn others about the dangers of underestimating warning signs and not blindly trusting roommates. The experience of living with an invader became a grim reminder that privacy and security are crucial and that trust must be earned, not given away. Over time, I learned to overcome the experience and regain a sense of security. I still carry the lesson that not everyone is who they seem to be and that it's essential to protect one's own privacy. Looking back, I see how terrifying the situation was and how recognizing warning signs can be the difference between a peaceful life and one filled with fear and insecurity. In the fall of 2019, I was excited to move into a new apartment to start my first year of graduate school. The apartment was perfect, affordable, spacious, and in a great location near campus. I was paired with a roommate named Alex through a university housing service. We met briefly during the apartment viewing, and Alex seemed friendly enough. We exchanged pleasantries, and I thought we would get along just fine. Alex was a little older than me, and he had a somewhat intense presence. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was polite, and we had a few friendly conversations. Everything seemed normal for the first few weeks. I was busy with my studies and didn't pay much attention to our interactions. Alex mostly kept to himself, which I found convenient given how absorbed I was in my work. It wasn't long before I began to notice some unsettling behaviors from Alex. Small things at first, a pattern of intense staring, an unusual interest in my personal life. He often asked intrusive questions about my schedule and my plans, but I brushed it off as curiosity or friendliness. The real red flags started when I found my personal belongings rearranged. Books and items in my room were out of place, but I couldn't recall moving them myself. I mentioned it casually to Alex, who assured me it must have been an accident. Then, Alex began to exhibit even more peculiar habits. He would linger near my door at odd hours and frequently make unsolicited comments about things he shouldn't have known. I began to feel increasingly uneasy, but I couldn't quite pinpoint why. One night, after a particularly grueling study session, I returned home late and noticed Alex's bedroom door slightly ajar. I could see shadows moving inside, and I heard what sounded like murmured conversation. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. I knocked lightly on Alex's door, but there was no response. I pushed it open just enough to glance inside. To my horror, I saw Alex hunched over a desk covered with disturbing content. Photos of me, notes about my daily routines, and even a map with pins marking places I frequented. The sight sent chills down my spine. It was clear that Alex was obsessively tracking my movements and activities. I backed away slowly, trying to steady my racing heart. I knew I had to do something, but I felt paralyzed by fear. I decided to gather more evidence before confronting him, so I started to keep a log of unusual occurrences and behaviors. A few days later, after accumulating enough evidence, I decided I had to confront Alex about his invasive behavior. I chose a moment when he was home, and we were alone. I gathered my courage and knocked on his door, asking to talk. When I entered his room, I was calm but firm. "Alex, I've noticed some very disturbing things lately. I found personal items moved around, and I saw what you have in your room. This is not acceptable." Alex's demeanor shifted abruptly. His calm facade crumbled, revealing a cold and menacing expression. "You're being paranoid," he said, his voice low and chilling. "Everything I do is for a reason." The conversation quickly escalated as Alex's true nature came to light. He admitted to tracking my every move, claiming he needed to ensure my safety. His reasoning was incoherent, revealing a disturbing obsession. I was horrified and knew I needed to act quickly. I immediately contacted the building management and reported Alex's behavior. They were initially skeptical but agreed to conduct an investigation after I provided the evidence I had gathered. In the meantime, I decided to stay elsewhere with friends to avoid further contact with Alex. During this period, I learned more about Alex's past from the building management. It turned out he had a history of manipulative and controlling behavior, with previous roommates reporting similar issues. This knowledge made me even more terrified of what could have happened if I hadn't taken action. The building management took the situation seriously and conducted a thorough investigation. They discovered that Alex had been involved in previous incidents of harassment and control. The decision was made to evict him from the apartment, and the police were involved to ensure his removal was handled safely. When I returned to the apartment, I felt a mixture of relief and lingering fear. The experience had left me deeply shaken. I moved forward with my studies but remained on high alert. The knowledge that I had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation stayed with me. The aftermath of living with a psychopath left a significant impact on my life. I became much more cautious about my personal security and learned to trust my instincts more deeply. I shared my story with friends and family as a cautionary tale, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and the need to address red flags early. Living with Alex taught me a hard lesson about the necessity of setting clear boundaries and being aware of the people we invite into our lives. It reinforced the need to prioritize personal safety and the importance of acting on our instincts when something feels off. Looking back, the experience was a grim reminder of the potential dangers of sharing living spaces with strangers. It underscored the importance of recognizing signs of obsessive or controlling behavior and taking swift action when necessary. Though the ordeal was deeply unsettling, it also empowered me to advocate for better screening and security measures for roommates. As I moved on from the traumatic experience, I found strength in sharing my story and helping others who might find themselves in similar situations. The scars from the experience might remain, but they serve as a constant reminder of the importance of vigilance and personal safety. In the summer of 2020, I was thrilled to start my new job in a bustling city. I had managed to secure a reasonably priced apartment, and I was excited about the prospects of living in a new place and starting a new chapter in my life. The apartment was shared with a roommate named Olivia, whom I had met through a roommate matching service. Olivia seemed pleasant enough during our initial meeting, and we were both eager to settle into our new home. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, a small living area, and a kitchen. One room was designated as a storage room, which was odd because it had a lock on it, but Olivia assured me it was just for storing old belongings and she rarely used it. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was too busy adjusting to my new job and enjoying the city's vibrant life. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started to pay closer attention. I noticed that Olivia seemed more secretive than usual. The locked room, once a minor curiosity, now became a source of growing unease. I decided to investigate further. One evening, Olivia was out for an extended period, so I seized the opportunity. I found the spare key to the locked room and, with a mix of excitement and trepidation, unlocked the door. What I saw inside made my heart race. The room was filled with a disorganized mess of old furniture, boxes, and stacks of paper. Among the clutter were several large trunks, all padlocked and dust-covered. In the corner, I found a small, dusty box. With trembling hands, I opened it and discovered a collection of old photographs, letters, and personal items that didn't belong to Olivia. Some of the photographs showed people I didn't recognize, and others were of previous tenants of the apartment. The discovery was chilling. It was clear that Olivia had been keeping a detailed record of past tenants and their personal belongings. But what was even more disturbing was a series of handwritten notes detailing personal information and observations about the tenants. When Olivia returned home, I was still in shock from what I had found. I knew I had to confront her, but I was unsure how to approach the situation. I decided to address it directly, hoping for an explanation that would make sense. "Olivia, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What's wrong?" "I found something in the locked room," I began cautiously. "There are personal items and notes about previous tenants. Can you explain what's going on?" Olivia's face turned pale, and she immediately became defensive. "You had no right to go into that room," she snapped. "Those things are private." Her reaction was alarmingly intense. I tried to reason with her, but she refused to provide any explanation. Instead, she became increasingly hostile, insisting that I was invading her privacy. After our confrontation, the atmosphere in the apartment became tense and hostile. Olivia's behavior grew more erratic, and she began to avoid me, making me feel like a stranger in my own home. The sounds from the locked room continued, growing louder and more unsettling. One night, I heard a commotion coming from the locked room, a loud crash followed by frantic rustling. Terrified, I called the building management and reported the strange behavior, but they were initially dismissive, attributing it to routine noise issues. I decided to stay with friends for a few nights to avoid further confrontation. My fears reached a breaking point when I returned to the apartment one evening to find Olivia missing. The room was eerily quiet, and the locked room door was ajar. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, I went back into the room. To my horror, I discovered that the trunks had been tampered with. The photographs and personal items were scattered around, and there were new notes added, entries describing my own routines and personal details. It was clear that Olivia had been monitoring me closely, just as she had with the previous tenants. The realization that Olivia had been keeping such detailed records and monitoring every aspect of my life was chilling. I decided to take action immediately. I contacted the police and provided them with the evidence I had gathered. They arrived quickly and conducted a thorough search of the apartment. The investigation revealed that Olivia had a disturbing history of obsessive behavior and had previously been involved in similar incidents in other apartments. She was taken into custody, and the building management assured me that measures would be taken to prevent future occurrences. The apartment was cleaned and inspected thoroughly. The entire experience left me deeply shaken and distrustful of new roommates. I moved out as soon as I could and began the process of rebuilding my sense of security. The ordeal had a lasting impact on me. I became more cautious and vigilant about my personal security and learned to trust my instincts more. I shared my story with friends and family, emphasizing the importance of recognizing and addressing warning signs early. Though the experience was traumatic, it taught me valuable lessons about personal boundaries and the need to be aware of the people we invite into our lives. I moved forward with a renewed sense of caution and vigilance, always remembering the chilling mystery of the locked room. Looking back, the experience was a stark reminder of the potential dangers of living with someone who hides disturbing secrets. It underscored the importance of maintaining personal safety and being aware of any signs of unusual or obsessive behavior. The locked room, once a minor curiosity, became a symbol of the deep-seated fears and psychological manipulation that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary facades. Though I eventually found peace and security again, the lessons from that experience remain with me, serving as a constant reminder of the need to protect oneself and trust one's instincts.